I'll try to make this strange story happen again. If it's something good, you're welcome anytime, but I absolutely can't forgive someone trying to bring about unfortunate events. My name is Ruby. I live in a certain regional city known for its idyllic landscapes, a comfortable place to live. My family consists of my parents and my brother Thomas, kind parents, and an excellent brother. Dad, who always wanted a girl, doted on me. Dad, being a worrier, interfered in this and that, and during my teenage years, I often rebelled against him. But now I think that was his way of showing love. Speaking of which, I'm already in my late 30s. Ironically, what made me realize how much I loved Dad was when I lost him to illness. At 25, I had never imagined saying goodbye to Dad so soon. At Dad's funeral, my handkerchief was soaked with tears that kept flowing, the weight of it somehow making me feel even sadder. Thomas had married a woman he'd been dating since his student days when he was 22, and had a son the following year. Both Dad and Mom were overjoyed with their first grandchild, doting on my nephew Spencer. Spencer was close to Dad, a real grandpa's boy, but lost his beloved grandpa and clenched his fist throughout the funeral, a memory that strongly stays with me. Seeing him grieving for Dad, I felt a selfish sense of comfort. 9 years later, I met a man by chance and got married.
So you're finally getting married. I was worried you might stay single forever.
I think Kendrick would be happy for you too, from wherever he is. You too, from wherever he is.
Spencer, now 15, cheekily said, "Hey, don't be rude."
But really, congratulations, Ruby. I wish you happiness.
I got along with my sister-in-law, Sophia, as if we were real sisters, and her congratulatory words meant a lot to me. Thus, I married amid warm blessings. Though my family joked, it was about time. I never doubted that my family, Mom, Thomas's family, and us as a couple would continue to interact happily. But soon, a terrible thing happened. An unexpected misfortune in the midst of ordinary life, something no one thinks about daily. It became real with a phone call from Thomas.
Sophia passed away about 30 minutes ago. She looked peaceful.
Shocked by the news of Sophia's death, I initially thought it might be a belated April Fool's joke, given it was April, but that was impossible. I hadn't seen Sophia twice. I hadn't seen Sophie directly since the wedding, nor had we been in touch by phone recently, so I was unaware that she had been hospitalized. Sure, I was busy with my new life. Mom and Thomas, trying not to worry me unnecessarily, respected Sophia's wishes and didn't inform me about her condition. While I understood Sophia and Thomas's consideration, it was natural to feel resentful for not being informed. I loved Sophia and wanted to be by her side to help her in any way, and I blamed Thomas for keeping me in the dark.
The illness progressed rapidly, weakening her day by day. She didn't want you to see her like that, he explained.
Sophia remembered how distraught I was at Dad's funeral, and wanted to spare me that deep grief by keeping her condition hidden. Like with Dad, I never imagined Sophia's situation would take such a turn. People unconsciously avoid thinking about misfortunes to live each day to the fullest. While the possibility of misfortune is always there for anyone, living in fear makes normal life impossible. And when misfortune becomes a reality, people are initially shocked, shaken, and plunged into grief. Though Sophia is gone, those of us who remain must continue our daily lives. Thomas threw himself into his work. Spencer, initially in a daze without Mom, has now shifted his focus to studying for the future. Thomas's work is our family business. Our family owns a bourbon whiskey distillery that has been operational since 1865, producing a renowned spirit that represents our region. After Dad's death, Mom took over as the company's head, with Thomas assisting her as the future successor. After graduating from college, I joined Dad's company, mainly handling administrative duties. Our distillery, steeped in tradition and established working methods, has been exploring changes in employment practices to keep up with the times, leading to a busy period with many decisions to be made. After all, it's a distillery with a legacy dating back to 1865. There are numerous traditions, work mechanisms, artifacts, and legends to uphold. Since childhood, I've been fascinated by my family's history and past events. I enjoyed listening to Dad, then living Grandpa and Grandma, and longtime employees, researching to satisfy my curiosity. Our property houses 2 large warehouses, storing heirlooms passed down through generations. In middle school, my interest centered on these warehouses, immersing myself in exploring their contents, starting with cleaning the dusty interiors, a task so laborious I often thought of quitting. It took nearly half a year to finish just one warehouse. It wasn't until high school that I could begin to think about it. Despite wanting to start sooner, my nature to complete tasks thoroughly, much to my parents' amazement, kept me focused on cleaning. The items in the warehouse stirred my curiosity. There were plenty of documents, well preserved, with the writing as clear as if it were from the time it was written. However, the script was deteriorated, making it difficult to read. The older they were, the more indecipherable they became, driving me to want to decipher them. As a result, I majored in history in the literature department at university, learning to decode old documents. Dad, half amazed, supported my determination to read the warehouse documents, encouraging my studies. Thomas, then a senior in college and planning to join the family business, cheered me on, curious about our family history. With my family's support, I dedicated myself to studying at university to satisfy my curiosity. Before graduating, I managed to review most of the stored documents, glimpsing into our family's history and roots. I selected major topics and compiled them into a book, which I self-published. Holding the book now brings back vivid memories of my excitement and discoveries at that time. 2 years after Sophia's passing, another surprising piece of news came. This time, it wasn't sad news about someone's death, but rather a joyous one. Yet it left me confused. It was about Thomas getting remarried. Since getting married, I left my family's company and have been working as a curator at a local museum, a role I was invited to take on earlier. It's a fulfilling job, where I can utilize the document deciphering skills I learned during my student days. Though I no longer saw Thomas at the company, living close to our childhood home, I frequently visited Mom. While I didn't see Thomas often, we weren't completely out of touch, but I had no idea he had found someone. Visiting home with my husband Hilbert, Thomas shared more details. His fiancée was the daughter of a business associate. Thomas, now 40, was marrying a woman 12 years his junior, a 28-year-old lady. I'm 8 years older, so it feels strange to have a younger sister-in-law. Thomas looks young for his age, and though I'm his sister and might be biased, he's quite handsome. But I wondered about his decision to marry again, especially with a 17-year-old high school student in the midst of adolescence and preparing for college entrance exams. I was curious about what kind of person his fiancée was. After Sophia's death, Thomas had thrown himself into work to forget his pain, but work alone couldn't fill the void in his heart. During that time, he met a woman named Marigold, who worked for a company designing labels for whiskey bottles. Thomas, who found her vaguely reminiscent of the late Sophia, kept her in his mind as an intriguing figure. He hadn't considered dating or remarrying until Marigold's proactive approach gradually changed his heart. Hearing that Marigold, not Thomas, was the initiator, I felt a bit uneasy. My common sense or judgment criteria couldn't understand how she could actively pursue a man 12 years her senior, whom I saw as an old man. I knew people's preferences are diverse, and there's no right or wrong in them, so I kept my thoughts from Thomas and Mom. When I asked Spencer what he thought about having a new mom, he said it's Dad's life. He should do what he wants. For me, my mom is the one who passed away. If she becomes my mom legally, then it can't be helped. His answers seemed detached or rather mature. Marigold, whom I met for the first time at a family meeting, was very beautiful, and indeed had an air about her similar to the late Sophia. While I couldn't yet tell if she was like Sophia inside, she must be wonderful since Thomas chose to marry her. Marigold's father, the president of a printing company we did business with, seemed pleased with his daughter's marriage to the heir of a prestigious distillery.
As a parent, my daughter's happiness is paramount. Marrying Thomas, the future head of the company, is reassuring. We look forward to continued business relations as family.
Marrying into a well-known family in this region certainly carries advantages for a businessman. While it's a fact, I couldn't help but feel uneasy about Marigold's father's words, sensing a desire for more profit. During this time, Marigold just smiled and didn't speak much. After marrying, Thomas and Marigold started living with Mom at our family home. I thought they were getting along well with Mom, but about 6 months later I ran into Spencer in town and asked about the situation at a cafe. According to him, Marigold hardly does any housework, leaving it all to Mom instead. It's more like she's forcing it onto Mom rather than taking it on willingly. Her attitude towards Mom is terrible, not at all like someone living as a daughter-in-law should, treating Spencer as if he's in the way. To Thomas, she acts sweet and dependent, but it seems her aim is just to get money from him. She stopped working after marrying and became a homemaker, but hasn't been able to curb her luxurious spending habits from before the marriage. I had been keeping my distance from the newlyweds, not wanting to intrude too much, so I had no idea about these developments. I couldn't stop thinking about what Spencer had told me. What was Marigold's true nature? About a half-month later I bumped into Marigold in town. Marigold asked to speak with me, so we went to a nearby family restaurant. I had a lot of questions myself. For the past half-month I had been preoccupied with what Spencer had told me, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was nervous, but I decided to take this opportunity to ask her directly.
Are you really treating Spencer as an inconvenience? I asked.
Well, a high school boy can hardly be considered cute, right? He's just in the way of mine and his father's life. I'm eagerly waiting for him to leave for university.
Her candid response to my question took me by surprise.
Why do they say Mom is doing all the housework by herself? Why don't you do anything?
Well, Samantha is still fit and healthy, isn't she? If she's healthy, she might as well work. What's the problem with being healthy?
Mom may be healthy, but she's getting on in years and should be allowed to relax, I said.
But Marigold, without changing her expression, replied, "Soon enough, she'll pass on, and then our family can really take over the company's management. Being the chairperson, she's just a nuisance, you know?"
How can you say things like pass on easily or she's a nuisance? You're the one not working and just leeching money off Thomas, I retorted angrily, wishing I could reprimand her more harshly.
That's fine. He married a young and beautiful woman like myself. It's necessary for him to invest in me. I'm an expensive woman to maintain, Marigold proudly declared, revealing her ugly true nature.
I was almost surprised she wasn't trying to hide it. Then she brought up something unbelievable.
By the way, that book you wrote, the one about the documents in our warehouse, it's quite interesting. Some of the stories are quite horrific.
The documents I decoded covered various aspects of our family's history. Among them was a strange story that Marigold referred to as horrific. Our bourbon whiskey distillery, established in 1865, was appointed by the nobility to produce a special brew. In return, a condition was set to marry a woman recommended by the nobleman. Rumor had it that these women were the nobleman's playthings, sent to our family as a way to get rid of them. One such woman brought a beautiful purple fabric with her as a part of her bridal trousseau. The purple with red lines woven into it was striking. Purple is seen as a noble color in various cultures. This seems to originate from the fact that purple dye was rare and expensive. This woman, introduced by the nobleman, took full advantage of her situation. As a wife, she shirked her responsibilities and indulged in leisure. Squandered the family's money, and frequently had affairs with other men, quickly becoming despised. She wasn't divorced only because of concerns about the nobleman, but as time passed, the influence of the nobility waned. Harshly criticized by the family, she became mentally ill and died, clutching the purple fabric she brought as part of her bridal trousseau. Though considered for incineration due to its high value, the fabric was spared and stored in the warehouse. In the early 20th century, the then owner, unaware of the fabric's history, thought to use it for his daughter's dress, but she suddenly died of an unknown illness. Any attempt to use the fabric in subsequent generations brought misfortune and mysterious illnesses. I introduced this story in my book as a strange tale after reading it from the documents. However, I presented it merely as a legend without scientific basis. I personally don't believe that the fabric brings misfortune. It's fascinating.
Thank you for the interesting story. Is the death of your dad and my husband's former wife due to the curse of that fabric? It's incredible.
Marigold left with a laugh, seemingly entertained. Dad, having learned about the fabric's legend, seemed intrigued. When he checked it in the warehouse, he was captivated by its beauty and nobility. Although old, it was well preserved, as if the fabric itself maintained its nobility. Dad, a realist who never minded the legends, thought of making his loungewear from it. Whether related or not, he suddenly fell ill and passed away. It's unclear about Sophia, but according to Thomas, she was strongly drawn to the fabric. Why she was drawn and what she did, we don't know. But could her illness be related? It's a mysterious story with many unknowns, yet Thomas and Mom, now frightened, secured the fabric more tightly and even had it sealed by the church. Why did Marigold take interest in such a tale? An indescribable anxiety enveloped me. Next year, on New Year's Day, celebrating Mom's 80th birthday, born in January, we held a dinner party along with the New Year's celebration. The main guests were Mom and Thomas, a married couple, and Spencer, who had gone to college and returned home. Naturally, Hilbert and I were also there to celebrate. It felt like just yesterday we celebrated her 70th. Telling Mom to stay healthy until her 90s, she happily responded, "I'll do my best." Delicious dishes were plentiful, though ordered from a restaurant, not homemade by Marigold.
Here's my gift to celebrate Samantha's longevity. As an octogenarian, a noble person deserves a noble color, so I present this purple coat.
Mom, eager to wear Marigold's gift, was interrupted as I instinctively snatched and threw it away. It felt like something compelled me to do so. The room fell silent for a moment. Then Thomas yelled, "Ruby, what are you doing?" That's what Marigold brought for Mom's celebration.
Thomas, you're angry with me for this?
I picked up the coat, showing Thomas its lining.
This fabric? The purple with the red lines in it?
Yes, that's the fabric that should be securely stored in our warehouse.
Thomas, who was deeply afraid of that fabric, turned pale and looked back at Marigold.
How could you think of letting Mom wear such a thing? You knew the story about the fabric, didn't you?
Marigold was so flustered that she couldn't respond immediately. I slowly began to speak to Marigold.
Mom was in your way, wasn't she? With Mom around, you couldn't freely use the house's assets. Thomas couldn't gain control of the company, and you couldn't benefit yourself.
Marigold stepped back as I pinpointed the truth.
You seem to be spending quite a bit, despite not having free access to money. Where did that money come from?
My words, filled with the certainty that I knew everything, turned Marigold's face from pale to white. I work as a curator at a museum, deeply knowledgeable about local historical items, and always keeping an antenna out for their whereabouts. Lately, many familiar items were caught on this antenna. Upon investigation, I found that these items originated from a woman. That woman, of course, was Marigold. She had been raiding the warehouse and selling valuable items without Thomas's knowledge. When I say I investigated, it was actually Hilbert who did the thorough research. Hilbert runs a management consultancy firm, renowned for his investigative skills.
You've even borrowed money from gang-like sources, haven't you? It's interesting what you find when you dig into why you needed so much money.
At Hilbert's words, Marigold finally couldn't stand it any longer and collapsed to the floor. Despite being married to Thomas, Marigold had continued her relationship with a man she had been dating before her marriage. This man, unemployed and indulging in gambling, was being financially supported by Marigold. In the midst of Spencer's murmured realization, Mom's sigh of resignation, and Thomas's angry voice, Marigold's world crumbled. Thomas confronted Marigold with divorce, and although she cried and begged for forgiveness, her actions were unforgivable. Thomas decided on divorce and hired a lawyer. Naturally, no one in the family sided with Marigold. She had no choice but to accept the divorce from Thomas and was driven out of the house. Even Marigold's parents were furious, disowning her. The debt borrowed from gang-like sources and the compensation for raiding our warehouse weighed heavily on her, leaving her in a desperate situation. Furthermore, Hilbert's investigation revealed another fact. Marigold was a descendant of a woman who had been married off through a lord's mediation long ago. Could it be that the resentment of a woman who died in bitterness and despair had possessed her descendant and caused harm to Mom and Thomas? The problematic fabric and coat were once again securely stored. We're thinking of consulting experts about what to do in the future. After that incident, Mom handed over all company authority to Thomas and fully retired herself. Spencer, who will join Thomas's company for training after graduating from college, also adds to the positive momentum. I believe Thomas will surely preserve the long-standing whiskey brewery. I continue with the job I love and am now assigned to decipher newly discovered ancient documents. I do think about wanting a child soon, given the risks of late childbirth, but that's something beyond my control. These days, I find myself wondering if there was anything in the warehouse that could bring good fortune.